I'm an American that's been living and traveling abroad for almost 2 years, but clearly I am not the only one, because in this video, I'm going to be reacting to other Americans who are getting out of the US for better lives and greener pastures. Without further ado, let's get into this first video.
I'm officially leaving the US to permanently live abroad, and I feel the same jitters that I felt this time last year when this whole journey even started. If you're new here, or maybe you haven't been here in a while, let me catch you up to speed. Literally this time last year, y'all had your girl crying on live television as I was packing and preparing to go explore the world, live, travel, all that good stuff. Let me just tell you, I had no idea where I was going, how long I was going to be there, and what that whole process was even going to look like. And here we are a year later after living in 3 different countries, and I finally know where I want to call home for a little while. And let me tell y'all, this past year has been extremely life-changing, but your girl is ready to have a home base, okay? I have apartment tours set up in the country that I'm gonna be in, and I wanna bring y'all along the process with me this time, because last time, I think I got caught up in this, like, what's gonna happen, and I don't have anything set in stone, so I don't really know what to share with y'all, and what if something goes wrong, and then I renege on I was going through all the mental gymnastics, right? And if you go back and watch that video where I was crying, the link is in my bio, by the way, I called that liberation season. It was this kickoff to this like newfound freedom, right? We've gone from liberation to preparation. This is preparation season. A lot of you have asked me about preparation, how much to save, what you need before you go. And I think while I'm in this, last countdown of getting ready to go, this will be a good time to answer those questions for you. So if you've been thinking about traveling abroad long term or possibly living abroad, definitely hit that follow button to follow along, because there's definitely some things that I know now that I didn't know before. Things that you would probably think you would know before you go, but as your type B bestie, yeah, I didn't do a lot of research when I first left. So now that I'm on the other side, there's definitely things that I'm going to be sharing with you. The first thing is this: sometimes the life you desire and the version of you that you feel detached from is on the other side of you doing it with faith, doing it anyway, doing it scared, not caring what anybody thinks, letting go, surrendering all your fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, and procrastination to God, and just doing it. You might not be moving abroad, but you might be sitting on a genius idea that you will not act on. You might be trying to start a new business. You might be entering a new relationship. That relationship might even be a relationship with the Lord. Like whatever it is that you feel worried or anxious about, the thing that you want to act on and you're just like, oh, you're trying to logically put all the things together. Sometimes you just need to take an action. Even if it's one action, that's going to get you closer to your answers. Whatever that is. I'm not telling you to go do nothing crazy. Or maybe. But what's crazy to you in this season could be ordinary for you in another. And it just takes you creating a new version of you, creating a new timeline, and really just believing that it's all going to work out for your good. So join me on this countdown, and I'm going to challenge you to take one action toward that thing that you think is crazy, that thing you've been sitting on. Yeah, let's get to it. All right?
Liberation season. She didn't tell a single lie throughout that video. Now, I just want to say this, okay? I'm respectful of everyone's beliefs. That said, you don't necessarily have to be religious or Christian or whatever else in order to make a move abroad. What you do need, however, is faith. And that's something that I'm glad she touched on. It's because a lot of people, I think they want to have this comprehensive plan in place. And I'm not saying you shouldn't plan. You should definitely create a plan, especially if you have financial dependence, but a lot of times the plan is not going to go the way you anticipate, because you're literally stepping into the unknown. When you're moving abroad, you're stepping into unfamiliar, uncharted territory, at least for you. So there's going to be an adjustment period in pretty much every regard. And you can sit here and visualize that all you want, but until you actually step off of that plane and you find yourself in a different country that you've never been to, you're not really going to know what that's like. And that's why the best thing you can really do for yourself is to just book that flight. And here's how I like to look at it. And I'm going to give you some practical advice here in a second, but right now I have my motivational speaker hat on, so just hear me out. You need to take action toward living abroad, because the worst thing that could happen is you end up back where you are right now. You end up back where you are. That's the worst case scenario, is you end up back in the USA, assuming you're from the USA and want to get out. Is that really that bad? I mean, if it is that bad, then you need to book that flight. But if it's not that bad, then what's the risk? Right? So right there, there's really no reason to not make that move. Now, financially, I know it can be very stressful, especially if you're not in a position like myself where you can take your income with you wherever you go. If you are in a position like that, I would suggest that you save at least 1 year worth of expenses. Now, of course, this comes back to planning. You have to have some sort of idea of what you're going to be spending on a monthly basis. If you don't know, there are many videos on YouTube, and you can even use ChatGPT that will help you figure out your anticipated cost of living on a month-by-month basis. Multiply that by 12, save that amount, and then book the flight. It's as simple as that. And if you're coming to a place like Vietnam or Thailand, so on and so forth, I can personally attest that you can live on about $1,000 a month for two people. $1,000 a month, US dollars that is, for two people. Now, what I would recommend you do in that year is, if you are going to be in a place like Vietnam or Thailand, you need to figure out a way to detach your income from your location. That's obviously easier said than done, but you need to figure out a way to do that. I'd recommend YouTube because it's the lowest barrier of entry business. But if you want to start an Etsy shop, or you want to start teaching English, whatever it may be, you need to find a way to detach your income from your location. And once you do that, focus on getting to a point where you can break even every month, and then from there you can start building up a surplus. But always make sure you have enough money to book a flight back to the US. That is my number one rule. If you find yourself on your last month of savings and you only have enough money to book a flight, and after this month you won't have enough money to book a flight, book the flight and go back to the US and start from scratch. But again, the worst thing that can happen is you just end up back where you are. So go ahead and take that leap into your liberation. On to the next video.
That is just one of the many reasons that I left America. But I didn't leave for politics, I left for peace. Let's rattle off some more reasons, shall we? Healthcare costs more than a human life. Rent is higher than everyone's sanity. Everyone is armed and no one feels safe. Work is a religion and burnout is a badge of honor. The severe control over women's rights. The food is full of chemicals. Police brutality is out of control. College costs more than a mortgage and does not guarantee a job at all. The corruption is more deep and ingrained into entire international political community than anyone can understand. And lastly, number 10, I have free will and I get to choose where I go and how I want to live my life.
So she didn't tell any lies either. I mean, when we talk about just the cost of college and healthcare, for example, in many cases, you're going to have a much better deal overseas. I don't really know of a country, if there is another country, where those two things, which are, in my opinion, fundamental to a highly functioning society, are that expensive. At least as expensive as the American college and healthcare are relative to the income. If there are countries where it's more expensive, let me know in the comments. I just haven't found them yet personally. And the fascinating thing is, a lot of Americans have this fallacy in their minds that college and healthcare in the US is just unequivocally the best. And while it is high quality, I will say it's high quality, when we think about how good it is relative to what you're paying, oftentimes the deal is just not that good. And that's the way I see the US these days. The US is actually, believe it or not the worst place you could live. I mean, people from, let's say, for example, Haiti would love, most of them, to be in the US. They'd love to be in any developed country. It doesn't matter who's in office. Granted, with the way the US is going in terms of immigration, I don't know if it would be particularly great for them, but I'm sure a lot of them would be willing to take that chance. But when we compare the US to other developed countries, it's just not a good deal. The way that I like to describe it is, the US is like that restaurant that costs $200 per plate, but the food is a 6 out of 10, trending toward 5 out of 10 in this day and age. And by the way, it doesn't even matter who's in office. This has pretty much always been the case for the majority of my life. Definitely the majority of my adult life. A lot of Western Europe, that's just what I have experience with. I lived in the Netherlands for 14 months. The Netherlands and much of Western Europe are kind of like a restaurant where maybe the food costs, let's say $80 a plate or $100 a plate, but the food is an 8 or 9 out of 10, right? Now, Vietnam, Thailand, and I'm assuming most other digital nomad hotspots like Colombia and Indonesia. We're going to Malaysia next, so we'll see if that falls into this category as well. These places are kind of like restaurants where the food is around $30 a plate, but the food is around a 5 out of 10. 4.5 to 5 out of 10. But when you take into account the difference in the power of the currencies, it actually ends up being closer to a 7 or 8 out of 10 as well. Because, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm filming this from a high-rise apartment. We're on the 19th floor. And this kind of apartment in the US would easily be $1,700 a month plus. And I know this because I've looked before. This apartment in Vietnam is $382 a month. And that's with me renting through Airbnb from a local, albeit. But that's with me renting through Airbnb where it's going to be marked up. That person that I'm renting it from is probably paying something like $200 a month for this apartment. So that just goes to show that if you can just detach your income from your location and just make $1,000 a month, you can live a good life. You can live a good life. And once you get to that point that you can afford to live in Western Europe, which takes a lot less money than you probably think it does, you're going to live an even better life. On to the next video.
Last spring, my wife and I decided to leave the country in 180 days. We gave ourselves 6 months to move 2 dogs out of 2 houses that we own in upstate New York. And we are officially 30 days away from moving. With the moving so close, there's just so many emotions, and I wanted to really talk about it because this channel has been just a love letter to all the micro decisions that we've made. It's really added up for us to be able to make this move of safety for not only myself, but for the family that we're developing, the children that we're planning on having. And I wanted to talk about it because yes, it's exciting in some ways, but there's also so much heartache. And the severity of what's going on right now for families that look like mine. I don't want to leave my home. We are the kind of people that have done everything right. We both have master's degrees, we own businesses, followed the American dream pipeline to a T, expecting a certain outcome that's now being ripped away from us. It's not an easy decision to make. I want to be in New York. I want to be in the United States. I want to build a life here. I want to raise my kids in the same place that I was raised. But unfortunately, I have to be brave enough to explore other options. Right now, at least. I can't have children in this instability of their parents might not legally be recognized as their parents or married every other year, with that legislation being constantly up for debate. Can't raise children in that way. It's real for a lot of people. This is not something that we want to do. It's something that we have to do for our safety. And just like we always do, we're going to make the best out of what life gives us, but it's not our first choice. And that's important for people to know. But I'll see you on the beach.
Wow, that one hurt my heart to watch, and it also helped me realize just how out of tune I am with what's going on in the US. Because if I'm gathering this correctly, obviously her and her partner are LGBTQ and they're planning on having children. So what she's saying is that they might not be able to have children. They might not be allowed to have children legally as people who are LGBTQ. Let me know if I'm misinterpreting that, but that was my takeaway from what she said, based on my limited understanding of the situation. And to both her point and the point of the last woman who was talking about women's rights being stripped away, I mean, it seems like marginalized groups in the US are really taking the brunt of everything. And that's not to say that that hasn't always been the case, but the worst part about it is that it seems like the US is beginning to move backwards. Before, there was kind of this struggle for progress, and they were inching their way forward, slowly but surely. But now, it's like they're losing ground, and I can only imagine. I mean, I'm a black man. You could argue I'm in that marginalized group, but in this day and age, I would say that for her to be in a position where she may not even be legally allowed to have kids, that is, again, a whole different level of marginalization. And I don't blame anyone in that position for wanting to leave. Now, it's also worth considering that some countries will be much worse off than the US in this regard. There are places where the crawl, the inching forward for rights for marginalized groups never even began. So obviously you want to avoid countries like that, and you have to do your research to figure out what those countries are. But you will definitely be better off. Someone like her will be much better off in Western Europe, for sure. I can attest to that. Something that really tripped me out when I was still in the US was the reversal, or I guess the overturning of the Roe versus Wade court ruling, where basically they determined that abortion was illegal. And I think this was in around 2022. That blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind that they made abortion illegal. And it got to the point where they were saying you weren't even allowed to leave the state to get an abortion somewhere else if you were a resident of the state that I was living in, which was Texas. I mean, when you see things like that, it's like, hold on, I thought this was the land of the free. That's not the kind of freedom that I'm familiar with personally. That's not freedom to me.